In previous lessons, we learned about characteristics of populations. You also learned about endosymbiosis, which is the theory that explains how eukaryote cells came to be when aerobic and photosynthetic bacteria started to live inside of another prokaryotic cell. Now we're going to turn our attention to a different type of symbiosis, one that occurs among members of different populations. This allows them to engage in relationships that are either beneficial to both, beneficial to one, or beneficial to neither. So if you're ready to learn about how populations interact to form communities, let's get started. The learning objectives are, after this lesson, you will be able to refine scientific models and questions about the effect of complex biotic and abiotic interactions on all biological systems, from cells and organisms to populations, communities, and ecosystems. You'll be able to design a plan for collecting data to show that all biological systems, cells, organisms, populations, communities, and ecosystems are affected by complex biotic and abiotic interactions. You'll be able to analyze data to identify possible patterns and relationships between a biotic or abiotic factor and a biological system. You'll be able to justify the selection of the kind of data needed to answer scientific questions about the interaction of populations within communities. You'll be able to predict the effects of a change in the community's populations on the community. And finally, you'll be able to use representations and models to analyze how cooperative interactions within organisms promote an efficiency in the use of energy and matter. Populations rarely, if ever, exist in isolation from one another. It is the interaction of populations in the same habitat that is critical to the maintenance of the homeostasis of that habitat. The interaction of populations in a habitat is what helps the ecosystem there regulate population growth and the diversity of the ecosystem. Since biology is all about relationships, this concept is most evident in ecological communities and the interactions that the populations within communities have with one another. In this lesson, we'll examine the various relationships that populations within ecological communities have with one another and how these relationships affect the delicate balance of those ecosystems. The most classic example of species interaction between populations in an ecosystem is predation, or the hunting of prey by a predator. Populations of predators and prey in a community fluctuate in a cyclical manner over time, but these cycles have a relationship with one another. The predator-prey cycle is an interaction that regulates the population growth of both populations, and here's how. When the number of prey rise, so do the number of predators. This cycle continues to a point because as the prey numbers increase and the predators feed upon them, the predator population grows due to an abundance of food. Once the predator population reaches a certain level, however, the prey numbers begin to fall as the abundance of predators means fewer prey available for the predator population to feed upon. The decreased number of prey drives the number of predators down. The lower number of predators then allows for the prey population to recover and repopulate. The cycle then repeats. Through natural selection, though, species have evolved various mechanisms to protect themselves from predators, and these things include such things as mechanical defenses. The hard outer shell of animals such as turtles and armadillos makes it tough for a predator to eat that prey animal. Physical defenses. The animal's body shape or physical features can make it difficult for predators to prey upon. Such physical features can include coloration known as aposematic coloration. Aposematic coloration typically results in an animal being brightly colored, which can serve as a warning to potential predators that their target is dangerous or toxic. Behavioral defenses. There are many types of behavioral defenses that animals have developed. One such defense is used by certain birds that involves regurgitation or throwing up. This is particularly harmful to aquatic predatory birds as the vomit sticks to their feathers and prevents the predator bird from flying away. The vomit also decreases the water repellency of the predator bird's feathers, which is dangerous to them as they dive for food in cold waters because the water repellent property of their feathers protects them from hypothermia. Finally, there are chemical defenses. And some animals produce venom or other toxins that can sicken or kill potential predators. And so what you see here is a skunk. Now, the chemical that the skunk produces isn't necessarily toxic, but it smells awful, which is kind of a warning to other animals. Hey, I stink, get away from me. But yet another type of defense involves mimicry, or the imitation of another organism. Some species have bright colors that allow them to be protected from predation, but other species have evolved mechanisms that mimic these bright colors. This mimicry affords them the same protection from predation, even though the mimic animal might not actually be harmful or unpalatable to eat. There are two types of mimicry that have evolved in response to predation. Batesian mimicry occurs when a harmless species mimics the coloration of a harmful species, which we'll call the model. If the mimic and the model share the same predators, then the mimic is protected from predation even though they do not have the capacity to harm or kill their predators, since they themselves are not toxic or harmful in any way. So a good example of Batesian mimicry is seen here with the milk snake, which is non-venomous. Notice it's brightly colored with a red, yellow, and black pattern. However, the model, which is the coral snake, also has a red, yellow, and black pattern. It's just differently ordered, and it is highly venomous and toxic. Yet both organisms are going to be protected from their predators. Then there's Mullerian mimicry. This occurs when both the mimic and the model are harmful or unpalatable, and both share similar warning coloration patterns. The best known example of this is the mimicry of the monarch butterfly by the viceroy butterfly. For a long time, it was thought that this was actually an example of Batesian mimicry, because it was thought that viceroys were not actually harmful to birds that preyed on them. After more study, it was discovered that the viceroy is actually more harmful and tastes worse than the monarch due to its consumptions of plants that contain alkaloid compounds. And the alkaloid compounds metabolites are unpleasant tasting and noxious to birds that consume the butterflies. So when birds eat the viceroy, they actually get really, really sick. Okay? But notice that the monarch and the viceroy look very much alike, because it's similar patterns on their wings, and they are similarly colored.